What is up, Defects? Today's video, we're talking newsstand comics versus direct edition comics. This video is actually from about a year and a half ago, a live show that we did. I clipped that little segment out of there because I think the information is still really valid. I clarify a few points during the video, but please be gentle. This was when we were young pups in the YouTube game, like I said, about a year and a half ago. So the video and the audio quality is not as good as we've had recently. So please bear with us. But just to clarify before we get started, what is a newsstand comic? A newsstand comic is anything that was sold on a newsstand, in a gas station, in a bookstore, not a comic book store. And a direct edition comic is anything that was sold directly to comic shops. That's just an easy, I'm sure we could break it down even more, but that's just a quick, easy overview of what those two terms mean. The rest of the information you're going to get now. Enjoy.
Well, we had an idea to get the chat involved and to talk about some stuff that, maybe not everybody knows about. Talking about direct issues versus the newsstand issues. And I know Matty put his own little twist on it. It wouldn't be the Defects without Matty doing his research. So go ahead, Matt. Tell him what you came up with.
All right. So I think everybody knows at this point that newsstands in the 90s and obviously later are just super sought after, right? They're harder to come by. They're rare. I think after 1995 is when it got really scarce. That's when it was 10% or less newsstand to direct. It was 10% of the print run was newsstand from 1995 on. That's when shit really went crazy. And newsstand in high grade is even harder because obviously when a book's on the newsstand, it's getting ruffled, it's getting touched by people, it's getting rammed. So the percentage of what was that ages? We had customers in the shop watching that super chat.
It's the greatest. That's the greatest thing ever. So you're welcome.
It's amazing.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
There you go. So 10%. Newsstands obviously are harder to come by, period. And they're even harder to come by in high grade for the reasons that I gave before. Also, one other fact, which I really didn't even factor in, is that newsstands are returnable, correct? So you could send back newsstands. And during at certain times, there was up to 30% returns in the 80s, 70s and 80s. There was 30% returns sometimes on newsstands. So we said to ourselves, well, what about direct? We know, Jay, what's the example that we always use for the direct being a little bit more scarce than newsstand?
Oh, we used the Monica Rambeau, the Spider-Man Annual 14, because
16.
everyone, 16, I'm sorry, 16. Yeah, everyone's like, oh, newsstand edition. And guys, it was the direct that you want on that copy. Well, actually, you want the Canadian price variant on that, and that's a whole different ball game, guys. You're talking about really scarce. But when it comes to direct versus newsstand, guys, grab that direct, man, because it was more rare at the time that came out. And like Matt said, these books were finger fucked and on magazine racks and outside at newsstands in the city. Who knows? So, it's different, man. Like, newsstands are harder to come by, but it all depends on the time period when you grab these books, guys.
So it's funny that you mentioned the time period because I'm going to tell you about some important dates. So we're going to go in reverse order. So we talked about 1995 being kind of where newsstands really increase in value, 1995 or later. But before that, between 1985 and 1995, it was still newsstand, but it wasn't as drastic. It's definitely still more sought after. So 1985 is the first time the tipping point for newsstands becoming more valuable is when that happened. So books before 1985, it was a pretty even split. And before 1980, it was heavily newsstand compared to direct. The first time that we were able to find that direct editions became a thing was 1973. Okay. And back then, everything had a barcode. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Here's an example. This is Eternals 8. And you can see the copy on the left has a barcode and the copy on the right has a barcode. The copy on the right has the diamond over the price, in the background of the price. That signified a direct edition. A lot of people don't realize that. I actually didn't know that until I started researching this a little bit.
Yeah, guys, and he's talking about on that upper left-hand corner. You could see the difference between that diamond and that box.
Yep. And we also had in 1979, okay, they started doing, and they only did it for a few years, they did the slash through the barcode, and that signified a direct edition. Another famous comic that has the diamond that everybody knows about is Micronauts #1, right? That one with the diamond. Everyone's like, why is that more rare? Well, it is. The direct at that point was more rare. Also, you had times where there was no barcode. It was just an empty square on the bottom. It was just a white square. So, yes, that is also correct, Joey. Yep. Couldn't rip them off and return them because like I said, newsstands were returnable and directs were not. So I started So go ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I had, you know, a newsstand shop on one side of my block, and I had a comic book shop on the other side of my block. Knowing what I know now, I used to always shop at the comic book shop because I wanted that little Spidey head on the bottom, or that little Superman head. I thought it was so cool. But going back now in the 90s, I should have grabbed all those barcodes. Who would have thought?
Exactly. So I saw somebody said something about the Whitman variant. Okay, Star Trek 101 Spock. That's a common misconception. So they actually, for Marvel, they were not considered a Whitman variant. They said it was, but it wasn't actually just Whitman. They did it for all. DC did their own Whitman variant that was actually a Whitman variant. So
just to clean up this thought a little bit, it was a little jumbled, is that so a Whitman variant for Marvel was kind of like a Ziploc bag, right? Ziploc is a brand, but people use that term for any type of resealable storage bag. Well, that went the same as the diamond-shaped Whitman variant. So there was other distributors besides Whitman for Marvel. And as you can see on the screen, there was an actual DC variant that said Whitman in the upper left-hand corner. So just to clarify that a little bit there.
Yeah, there you go. I'll take a strike-through version over a newsstand. Yes. Now, we started looking into prices, okay? And it hasn't really happened yet where in the 70s, the direct editions are going for more money than the newsstand. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen, but on a whole, they're not more sought after because a lot of people don't even know the difference. All right? A lot of people on the diamond ones, they're putting newsstand on eBay auctions. So it's not as obvious as the newsstands in the 90s where it's like one has a barcode and one doesn't. That's very obvious. Most people don't realize the difference of a direct and a newsstand in the 70s. So there isn't a ton more demand for direct editions in the 70s and early 80s. There's just not. The prices that we saw, there weren't many that were significantly higher than newsstand. And that also has to do with, like I said, the fact that newsstands were returnable. So even though there was less direct, the fact that you were able to return the newsstand brought the number of newsstand down. Now, there was still less direct, but those numbers were a lot closer than they were saying where it was newsstand in the 95 versus direct in the 95. Okay. The numbers, the gap in the 90s for newsstand and direct was much closer in the 70s for newsstand and direct. So from what we found, direct is not more sought after for the 70s and early 80s. So I thought that was really interesting. And so I think Josh hit it on the head.
Yep. I was just going to say, there's almost no difference whatsoever yet. But the way it's trending, it probably will be, guys. So what does that tell you? It tells you still got time, you know? And I want to give a big shout out to Guy Forge because, dude, this is a hot topic in the community right now. Oh, yeah. And you brought up a great Forge face-off, brother.
All right, boys and girls, just to tie a nice bow on this. So in the 90s, we know, and past the 90s, we know the newsstand is just going to be more valuable and definitely rare. However, in the early 80s, it doesn't seem like there should be a premium, but guess what? The market has spoken, and there is. 1981, 1982, 1983, there is still a premium on the newsstand comics when there necessarily shouldn't be based on rarity. But as comic collectors, we do set the market. So everyone's entitled to collect what they want. Maybe you want all newsstands in your collection. Maybe you want all direct edition in your collection. It's a really cool conversation. So let's continue it in the comments. Let us know what you want us to clarify. If you think we maybe misspoke, let's talk about it in the comments. If you're new to the channel, if you could subscribe, that'd be great. Hit the notification bell. Give us a thumbs up if you like this information. We have our 7,500 subscriber giveaway going on right now. Basically, to enter, all you have to do is comment on this or any video. The more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. We got 7 or 8 great comic book prizes. So for the pressable defects, we'll catch you on the next video.